A happy mock draft Monday, my people. Hope everyone's having a great Monday. If you're on the East Coast, hope you guys are staying safe in that crazy snow. Please send some over here to Denver as we can use some. And hopefully, you guys feeling good, man. If you're American, if you're from the U.S., gold medalists in hockey. You gotta love it, Ben. You gotta love it. We are taking over the world of sports. So I dig that. Hopefully, you guys had a chance to enjoy that game as well. But we got a mock draft Monday today, man. We're gonna have a lot of fun with it. It's my first official mock draft of the mock draft season before the combine, which is kicking off as we speak in Indianapolis. All the on-field workouts and everything will be happening this Thursday, but they got all the teams there and the players and everything. And what I love about the combine the most really is all the news that comes out afterwards, right? The trades, the extensions, the franchise tags. You start to get a little bit of intel based off of, GMs getting together and talking with some agents and stuff like that. So hopefully some really fun and exciting news for the NFL also. And then, watching these guys work out is always fun. Checking out the measurements and seeing whose stock goes up and whose goes down after this draft is always good. So let's get into it, guys. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and we'll get this up and rolling. All right, so not going to spend too much time on the Vegas Raiders. Basically written in pen at this point. Fernando Mendoza is going to be the pick for them at number 1. So this is really where the draft starts, in my opinion. Now, I'll tell you this. In an ideal world, the New York Jets, in my opinion, would love to trade back on this pick. They would love to move a few spots back. And a couple teams that I think could maybe make a move if they wanted to get like a big-time pass rusher would be potentially the Titans, if they wanted to get their defensive lineman, like their, whether it's Ruben Bain or David Bailey, one of those, whatever edge that they like, they wanted to supersede the Cardinals, they could do that. And, maybe even a team like Washington, but that's going to be tougher because they don't really have a lot of picks in general. So they'd ideally like to move back, but I think it'd be really difficult for them too. And if I'm the Jets, listen, I can't really recall a situation as bad as it is currently with the Jets in my lifetime. Now, what's good about this, the positive here, but to honestly, to credit the Jets, I will say they're doing this rebuild properly. They are completely revamping the roster, the culture, and all of that. And one thing I personally believe very strongly about the Jets is that had they gotten the number 1 overall pick and had a chance to get Fernando Mendoza, they would have absolutely not retained Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn is kind of a dead man walking. I don't like to always use that statement, but he's basically not. I mean, unless there's a miraculous turnaround and he really shows that he's a lot more competent than he showed in year 1, I don't see any reason for them to come back, for him to come back next year. And I think that they would have really liked to have a new coach come in and handpick their quarterback. But this is going to be all about building out the talent as much as you can for the future quarterback, whoever that might be. And in my opinion, man, again, I'd like to trade back because you got to accumulate as many picks as you can, but you also got multiple first rounders next year. For me, it's Ruben Bain. I think Ruben Bain is the best non-quarterback in this draft. I think he's so unbelievably dominant. I love the frame, the size, the 6'3", the 270. He's got the versatility to be an outside edge in a 3-4. He can play in the 4-3 base. Aaron Glenn kind of does a mix of the two. So I really do believe that Ruben Bain would be a cornerstone type of player for this Jets defense moving forward. So that's who I would go with. And then here we got the Cardinals, right? Cardinals are an intriguing situation because, we know that it's probably not going to be Kyler Murray who returns, but we don't know who it's going to be at quarterback. And they got quite a bit of needs, but nothing really bigger, in my opinion, than their need on the offensive line. I think that it is so apparent. And so they need to be able to fortify the O-line. But they also have a GM. The GM is a really big fan of trades as well. Man, does he like to move back Ozzie Mossenford. So I think this is another situation where they would love to move back. Maybe a team's trying to jump the Titans to get one of those edge guys. Maybe another team like potentially the Giants, they really like a tackle. They want to go up there and get them. This could be one where I think the Cardinals could move. But we're not going to do trades in this one. We're just going to keep everything status quo. And to be quite honest with you guys, looking at this, If I was the Cardinals, man, I don't know if I would necessarily go with position of need. I don't know how I feel about any of these tackles going this high, but we'll know more about the combine, and most likely they're going to go in the direction of tackle. I know Francis Mauigoa is kind of the cornerstone, the main guy. We're going to have back-to-back Hurricanes go this early. I can see it, and that's what ultimately I would choose. I think Mauigoa is just, he can play right or left side. He can play in the interior if you need him to early in his career. He makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals, but I did have a tough time with them because I look at them having a lot of different options in terms of ways in which they could go. So now the Titans are on the clock, and the Titans are going to be thrilled because arguably the best player in the draft in Arvell Reese is available. Now, the reason that I think it's probably Ruben Bain is because with players like Arvell Reese, is he an edge? Is he an off-ball linebacker? Is he a little mix of both? That always scares me when it's talking about my team drafting him. But he makes a lot of sense for the Titans with Robert Saleh there as the coach. That's a guy that would fit this defense in a lot of different ways. He'd be able to get really creative with the way that Arvell Reese plays. I think Titans fans would be thrilled with that pick. So I'm going to go Arvell Reese for the Titans at 4. And I think they're going to be really happy that they got the opportunity to take him there. So I like that one a lot. I'm a big fan of that pick overall. Now, looking at the Giants, man, what do the Giants need? The Giants need a wide receiver. We'll see what happens with Wandale, but obviously Malik Neighbors coming off of an injury. They're really, really thin at that position. If you're asking me, I never liked the idea of taking a wide receiver this early when you have such glaring needs at really along the entire offensive line. Jackson Dart needs to protect himself better. He needs to be better, but he also needs to have a lot better players around him to keep him upright because he's only going to be as good as his line. And so even though, Carnell Tate is somebody that is mocked here a lot, or, Jordan Tyson or Mekhi Lemon, really whatever your flavor is there. But the Giants, man, the Giants need to fortify that offensive line. And the problem is, I don't necessarily know if there's anybody here that they like enough to take at 5. Like Spencer Fano going at 5, I'd be fine with it. If he's a tackle that you like, I think he's worthy of that selection. I think he's one of the best tackles in this draft. I like the fact that he has a little bit more versatility than Mauigoa, maybe not as powerful. So I'm going to go in that direction because I think that that's a really good move. A sneaky player that would make a lot of sense here is Vega Ioane. And he's a guard, and this is early. So again, the Giants could look to trade back here, maybe move back a little bit more, still have an opportunity to get him. But he's a dominant guard that could really help keep Jackson Dart upright, but also get that run game up and going. But I think the positional value of tackle is way too high. I'm going to go Spencer Fano here at 5. I just think it's something that makes a lot of sense. And that's the direction that they can go in. There is a very big conversation to have about Caleb Downs, and that would be a fun pick. And he's an unbelievable player, and he definitely would make their secondary a lot better. But I'll tell you what, man, like, you are nothing without a really good offensive line. They need to start there and build it from the inside out. But Caleb Downs would make a lot of sense, especially with Jim Harbaugh being there. Maybe he's looking to get his next Kyle Hamilton there, but we'll see. I'm gonna go with Spencer Fano on this one. All right, the Cleveland Browns, the good old Cleveland Browns. Where are the Browns gonna go? There's a million different ways that the Browns could obviously take this pick. Ideally, they got a lot of holes at tackle and at guard as well. And the way that the board kind of fell to them is those 2 tackles went early. Tackles typically do go early. And so I feel like for them, it's going to be a best player available type of a pick, right? And it would be really unfortunate for Caleb Downs, even though he would stay in the state of Ohio, but I think it's something that makes sense. They don't necessarily need a safety help, but they could use just somebody that could really reset the culture, help the back end of that defense become even better, and really just do things, make that basically adding strength to a strength is what I'm saying with Caleb Downs. I think that he's somebody that would make a lot of sense. And even though they need a whole lot of help elsewhere, if they can't move back and acquire a couple more picks, I feel like Caleb Downs just makes the most sense. I think he's the best player available. The dude's a ball hawk. He's everywhere. Really, really good player. So we're going to go with I don't think it's a very common pick. I haven't seen that one mocked very often, but I think it's something that would, ultimately make sense for the Browns, as I don't see any other player that can be as impactful and more of a certainty than Caleb Downs. All right. Speaking of another team that would love to move back, this is one of those drafts where I think a lot of teams would want to move back, especially because of where the strengths are in this draft. The strengths being at like inside linebacker as being, one big strength. Defensive line is another big one, but there's a lot of good safeties as well as some corners. Those guys don't always go this high, so maybe these teams want to move back. Washington would make a lot of sense to want to move back because they have barely any picks. They don't have a second rounder, I don't believe. So they could use it to, fortify a lot more of that. But man, there's a player here in David Bailey that if he fell to 7, I think they'd be thrilled with. He's probably the best pure rusher in the entire NFL draft, somebody that can truly get after the quarterback, and they could absolutely use that. And they'd be fortunate to get him. We'll see how he holds up against the run, but Dan Quinn would love to have somebody like him there. So he's somebody that would make a whole lot of sense. Now, for the New Orleans Saints, you can go, again, a multitude of different ways, right? A lot of people love Jeremiah Love here. And I think for me, it would be something that makes sense, and it would be fun to see them kind of get an unbelievable generational type of talent there. Their O-line is decent enough to be able to have some good production from him, unlike what you saw from the Raiders and the running back Ashton Genty last year. So I'm thinking about Jeremiah Love, but man, they could use more pass help and pass catchers on the outside for Tyler Shuck. And Carnell Tate, I think, he's so good. And Mekhi Lemon, I think, is also so good. And I think of Kellen Moore and what he likes to do. And I personally, I have Mekhi Lemon as my number 1 wide receiver on my board. I think he's the best receiver overall. He's a playmaker. He's dynamic. He could be utilized a lot like that CeeDee Lamb role that he had. Complements that team well. They could put him all over the line of scrimmage. And Mekhi Lemon, man, I love it. I think it's something that makes a whole lot of sense for him there. And here's where it gets really interesting with the Chiefs, right? Because with the Chiefs, you can look at them going in a lot of different directions here. And as a Bronco fan, I don't like any of these potential options because they're all very good players. A lot of people have Jeremiah Love mocked to the Chiefs. I don't know if they'll actually end up doing this because they might still have a little bit of PTSD from the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick. I know that these are completely different players. But Andy Reid, I think he realizes a couple things. He needs to get more weapons, and he needs to really revamp the weaponry for Patrick Mahomes around him, right? They've always kind of figured it out with running back. I mean, yes, Jeremiah Love would take that to another level, but they've always kind of figured it out, and he doesn't always seem to really, value running backs as much as other head coaches do. And so that's why I think the guy that makes the most sense is Carnell Tate. And this would be someone that not only would be an unbelievable weapon for Pat Mahomes, but he would really help bring a lot of good leadership traits to that room. Obviously, they got like Rashee Rice, but he's got some off the field stuff that he's dealing with. And he's kind of hasn't always been the best character off the field and in the locker room from what you hear. And he'd be a good compliment for Xavier Worthy. He'd be able to have Xavier Worthy kind of be in a role where he can take the top off of the defense, and he's going to really garner a lot of attention down low. Carnell Tate's a phenomenal player. I love that fit there, unfortunately. And I think it's something that would make a lot of sense. And really, you could flop Mekhi Lemon or Carnell Tate here, and I think it's something that would make a lot of sense. So that's kind of the direction that I have them going, and I think it makes a whole lot of sense. Now, the Bengals always do dumb things. They never do the smart things that Bengals like to do, that Bengals, the franchises typically do. But there's no better fit right now for this Bengals team than Vega Ioane, period. This would be an amazing pick. He's worth the number 10 overall pick. They have a huge need on the interior of that offensive line. They need to protect Joe Burrow. That's really a non-negotiable at this point. And he can help with a lot of the pressure up the middle, going up against Myles Garrett twice a year. Obviously, the Ravens, playing in the AFC North there's always going to be a lot of pass rush. But this guy can not only be an amazing asset for Joe Burrow, but he can help them a lot in their run game and be able to be a little bit more nuanced. I get it. They have a lot of defensive needs, right? I very much understand that. And again, this is a deep class at the interior of the defensive line. But it is time, guys. Like the fall off from Uwane and the next guard is very, very steep. Whereas maybe early in the second round, you might be able to still get some guys that can make a lot of plays for you on defense. I'm going to go with Vega Uwane. Sonny Styles would be another player that makes a whole lot of sense here, in my opinion. But I just love this fit, man. I think you need to invest in the offensive line desperately for Joe Burrow. That's the most important thing. The defense, they can figure that out in free agency and figure it out with the rest of the picks in their draft as well. All right, let's get into pick number 11 with the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins, they need a lot of work. They need a lot of things for their roster. Obviously, a new look team. Tua's probably gone. They already cut Tyreek Hill. Who knows what's going to end up happening with the rest of their roster, really. But they are in desperate need of help in the secondary. I could see them being aggressive, making a trade or signing a cornerback in free agency and doubling down in the draft and getting somebody as well. Now, Jermod McCoy didn't play last year, but his 2024 tape, extremely impressive. Mansour Delane, also a really, really good player. He's kind of a lot of people's number one player, a corner, depending on who you ask. But both guys, 6 feet tall, got the right size. They can play on the outside. They can play on the inside. You got to love that. I haven't looked into the corners as deeply because I just don't think my Broncos are going to take one, even though they did last year. But what's going to be able to fit, Hafley's system the best? That's really what it's going to boil down to. But so you can pick between Mansour Delane or Jermod McCoy. I'm going to go Jermod McCoy. I think that they're going to lean on that 2024 tape, and you see a little bit more of a ball hawk there with someone like him. So I'm going to go in that direction. Now, here, it's interesting with the Cowboys, right? Sonny Styles is phenomenal. He's unbelievable in so many different ways. I think he's one of the cleanest prospects that I've truly watched as a off-ball linebacker. But again, he is an off-ball linebacker. And even though the Cowboys do love their off-ball guys, they could certainly use a little bit of help on the back end, be able to, get some more corner help to, fortify the back end of that roster. They got Quentin Williams in the D line, so that was good. They could use some pass rushers, but there isn't really one I would take here. So I love the idea of Sonny Styles. I get that he's an off-ball linebacker. I just think the fit makes too much sense. He's so good, so talented. He would make that defense a lot better. And yeah, he'd be able to cover up a lot of the holes and a lot of the flaws that they got. So I love Sonny Styles here going to the Dallas Cowboys. They do have another pick later, so we can see what they end up addressing there. They're sitting really pretty in this draft. I'll tell you that from the Micah Parsons trade. So that I certainly dig. All right, looking at the Rams. Again, they could use help at tackle, but Mansour Delane is there. I think it's really good value. I think he makes a whole lot of sense for the LA Rams. I love that. I'm going to go ahead and take them to have cornerback help. And they also have another pick later on in this draft as well. But I think Mansour Delane is someone that makes a boatload of sense there. So I love that. All right, let's go to the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, you never really know what they're going to do, right? But I think it's time for them to give a legitimate weapon to Lamar Jackson. Okay. Now, this could be a really sneaky spot where maybe Denzel Boston goes, because I don't think he's necessarily better than Jordan Tyson. After really going back and watching a lot more Jordan Tyson, I can see why people love him. The injury concerns, what happens at the combine is going to be really big. But David Boston is kind of that player, that type of receiver that the Ravens have been missing for a really long time. And he would make a whole lot of sense for them. But ultimately, just the talent of Jordan Tyson, his explosive ability, and the fact that they can line him up in multiple different spots is really going to be so important for them, in my opinion. And I think that he's a really good compliment to Zay Flowers, just like Denzel Boston would be. But I think Jordan Tyson's too good to pass up. I think that he's going to go there to Baltimore. And I think that's a really good spot for him, man. I'll tell you that. Like, I love that fit quite a bit. Quite a bit there. So yeah, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Crazy, man. Like now, the Jeremiah Love train has kind of fallen a little bit, right? Maybe the NFL has a little bit of, they have a lot of recency bias. So maybe they look at what happened with Ashton Genty and they see, oh, taking a running back that early is not always the best, especially if you don't have the best infrastructure for that team, right? And that's kind of what it is here. Like a lot of these teams, they either not a need or it just doesn't necessarily make sense for them to go running back. So there could be someone flying up the board trying to draft Jeremiah Love at this particular point. But let's get into the Bucs, man. The Buccaneers can go a lot of different ways here with the Todd Bowles defense. And, if you look at some of the pass rushers, you got Cassius Howell, who's somebody that's there that makes sense. Keldrick Falk is getting a lot of buzz as well. And I kind of understand why, because Keldrick Falk is a really good, he's a good professional player in the sense of like, he's probably one of those athletes that is going to be better in the pros than he was at college. You see the 6'6", the 285 build. That's a mass. Some people will say it's a tweener, right? So that could be a problem, but super good at setting the edge. Really, really good at being able to get after the passer. But how is he a fit in a Todd Bowles defense compared to Cassius Howell, who's a completely different type of player, right? Someone that is a sack merchant, had 12 sacks last year. His pass rush win rate's amazing. Are they looking for a pure edge or are they looking for more of a hand in the dirt guy? I think pure edge makes sense. I think Cassius Howell here makes a whole bunch of sense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, so let's go back to the Jets, right? The Jets are now picking again at 16. They took Ruben Bain earlier in this draft, and now they're sitting in a position where could we go? Ideally, Uwane would have been here for him. That would have been a really good pick. Taking Vega Uwane would have made a lot of sense, but he's not here. And so what are you going to continue to do? You need to keep building out that defense. Do you need to get some guys that can actually, get some interceptions and pick the ball off for a team that got 0, right? I love Emmanuel McNeil-Warren here, man. I think he's a player that could come in and just be such a versatile weapon for that Jets defense on the back end. You can put him in the nickel. He can play in the box, safety. He can play deep. He can really set a tone for a Jets defense that needs to have a tone setter. I like the fit there. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. And again, you're looking at bringing in culture guys that can be core players for your team that you're going to be building out because you're so depleted. Yes, they could probably go at another position that has a little bit more value, right? Peter Woods is somebody that would ultimately make sense if you really wanted to add those two beasts on your defensive line. But I just think Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is really good. I think he's going to be flying up draft boards. And I love the fit there for that Aaron Glenn defense and really for any defense that wants to take him there. So I like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren there. And that's how we're going to go. So now we get into the Lions. All right. Lions, the needs here, they say center, tackle, edge, and corner, right? A lot of different ways that you can go. Peter Woods is someone that my mind kind of goes to. If you really want to have a versatile, dominant defensive lineman that can play all positions along that line, it could be a really good compliment. Help Aiden Hutchinson out, kind of take some of those double teams off of him. Peter Woods would actually make a whole lot of sense. Keldrick Falk as well. If you wanted to have a little bit more pass rush, maybe a little bit more of a true edge, I like that fit there a lot as well. And so this one's a little bit tough for me, but I'm going to go with Keldrick Falk. I just believe in the player. I think he's so good, violent. Again, just really, I feel like he's going to be just a really good pro player. You're going to be able to get there's a lot more juice to squeeze out of him as a pass rusher, but the way that he's able to set the edge so well this early in his career, and he can play in multiple positions. I like Keldrick Falk going to the Detroit Lions there at 17. But other guys that you could look at that would make sense if you're looking at the edge room are going to be TJ Parker. I wouldn't say Akeem Mesidor just because he's a little bit older, but those kinds of players are somebody that can make a lot of sense. Our Mason Thomas is getting a whole lot of buzz too, so we'll see. But I like Keldrick Falk there. I think it's somebody that makes a whole lot of sense. All right, let's get into the Vikings. The Vikings last year, they made a mistake. I kept mocking them to take Eman Wari because I thought it was such an unbelievable fit for that Brian Flores defense. They didn't take Eman Wari, and that was a little bit of a frustration for him. But yeah, they need help on a DB, right? So they got Avion Terrell, Brandon Cisse. I think both guys are really good. I think Keith Abney, somebody that could definitely sneak into the first round as well. And then you also have Dylan Thieneman, who's going to be probably rising up a lot of people's draft boards. But I like Avion Terrell here. I think he's a really solid overall player. Again, Keith Abney would make a whole lot of sense too, man. This guy's getting a lot of buzz. But I say you go with Avion Terrell. A tiny bit undersized, but he could play in a lot of different places. If they want a little bit of a bigger guy, they can go with Cisse or Abney. But I like Avion Terrell here to go to the Vikings and help give them some secondary love that they could certainly use. But Dylan Thieneman, I know that Daniel Jeremiah had Dylan Thieneman going here. I believe he was really impressed by him. That versatile safety is going to be a position that after you see, what the Seahawks did with Eman Wari, some teams might want that. There's always a little bit of that, copycat league that happens the following year, right? That happened with the Eagles after they won the Super Bowl. Everyone wanted to fortify their D line. Now they're talking about, really versatile safeties. So he could be someone that works there, but I think they're just going to go with a true corner as someone that makes a whole lot of sense here. All right, so for the Falcons, they need more help on all along the defensive line. They just do. They need to be able to get stronger there. They need to be able to get better at stopping the run, better at getting after the passer. I just think Peter Woods has way too much talent to pass here. He makes a whole lot of sense for them. Again, a massive guy, 6'3", 310. I like the fact that he's not that tall. He can give some, he's really good with leverage. The production wasn't always there, but the tape and you see just crazy talent with this kid. He's relentless. He's good against the run. He can get after the passer as well. I think he fits really good in that Panthers defensive line. So we're going to go with Peter Woods there at 19. So now we're back to the Dallas Cowboys, who we know need a lot of reinforcements on defense, and they got an absolute stud in Sonny Styles. I think that would be a home run pick. And this would give them a little bit more flexibility to be able to go out there and say, hey, do we want to go D-line? Do we want to look in the secondary, right? Are any of these corners worth taking at 20? I think Cisse and Abney are definitely worth the conversation. Okay? You look at the edge room. You look at the defensive interior. All right? I love Caden McDonald, and I love Caleb Banks. I think that they're both very, very good. How do they work with Quinton Williams? Do they need somebody a little bit different? Do they need someone that can get after the passer a little bit more? I think that they do, which is why I think somebody like TJ Parker makes a whole lot of sense. He's a really good pass rusher, good size, can set the edge pretty well. He can really help add another really good element to that team. Akeem Mesidor would make sense too, just because he's a long guy. Like, he's technically an edge here, but I would see him as being more of a 3-tech in that defense. But I think TJ Parker here makes a lot of sense. And the Cowboys would knock it out of the park, man. They get a really, really good edge rusher that can get after the passer. And they got Sonny Styles, who can just go all over the field. You talk about helping out your defense. That's exactly what it is that does. And so that's where it becomes a lot of fun. Guys, I didn't even really plan this mock draft. I didn't plan for Jeremiah Love to kind of fall the way that he did, but it just kind of all really worked out. And I don't think that this is ultimately going to happen. I don't think he's going to fall this far. But could have gone to a lot of different places. But in this mock right now, he just hasn't. And I think that, honestly, that's probably the smart thing to do. I've never been a proponent of taking running backs in the first, especially early on. So we'll see what ends up ultimately happening. But, there could be a situation where a team is just going to say, hey, we're going to take the best player available. And that's what that's what might ultimately happen. But I think we've been filling in needs for a lot of these guys up to this point. So we will see. But if I was going to go back and maybe put Jeremiah Love somewhere, it actually would have made a lot of sense to put him in Minnesota. Because, man, you can help JJ McCarthy out a lot by having a running back like Jeremiah Love there. So, maybe in the 2.0, I know he'll be higher, and we'll see where he ultimately goes there. But that's kind of what I got rolling there. All right. Going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a really good fit, a fit that I think just makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know what's going to happen with DK Metcalf, if they're going to, retain him or anything like that, but they could use somebody on the opposite of him. They could use more weapons on that defense, on that offense. Denzel Boston makes a lot of sense. I think that 21 is a really good range for him. And so I really like that pick a lot for the Pittsburgh Steelers there to give more weapons to, not just Aaron Rodgers this year, but whoever ends up being the future quarterback once they figure that out. So that's something that could certainly make a whole lot of sense for them. All right, now you got the Los Angeles Chargers. All right, now what are the Chargers going to do? The Chargers can go a lot of different directions here. They would certainly love to have a little bit of help on the interior of their offensive line, right? And they would also like to be able to make sure that they have some more reinforcements on the back end in case anything happened. And somebody that always keeps coming back to me for them is Caden Proctor. And the reason is because, listen, the Chargers have two of the best tackles already. So this would be one of those situations where Caden Proctor would come in and play guard. I think he'd be a really good guard in the NFL, a really dominant guard for the type of offensive line that, Jim Harbaugh wants to run there, wants to have there. So he could fill in and be an immediate plug and play guard for them. They'd have a massive offensive line. But if anything were to happen to those tackles like you saw last year, you've got somebody that can legitimately play the tackle position when needed as well. I don't know how good of a tackle Caden Proctor will be in the NFL, but I think he'll be a really good guard, and at worst be an average to above average starting caliber tackle. So I think this is actually something that makes a whole lot of sense. It would be a great Jim Harbaugh pick, and it would be really smart. It would be really smart of them to fortify that O-line in front of Justin Herbert and keep rocking out at that point. All right, the Jeremiah Love fall continues, man. It does. The Eagles, man, they need to have help along their offensive line. They need to be able, they got some aging tackles, right? Lane Johnson is coming back, so that's good. That's really good. But you need to be able to plan for the future. We know that they love to build in the trenches, and I think that very similarly to what the Chargers just did, they could go with a tackle that. It could be Lomu, who maybe plays on the inside early and is a immediate left tackle starter on the outside, or even could play on the right side. Monroe Freeling, again, somebody that would also make a whole lot of sense for him. Maxi Inachor. And there's Blake Miller. Blake Miller is somebody that can make a whole lot of sense too. And he's played a lot of right tackle. So do you want to go with more of the right tackles? The guys that have played on the right side more? That would really be Inachor or Blake Miller. Or do you just want to go with the really good football players? I think Caleb Lomu is someone that makes a lot of sense. He can play on the inside early as they need to. And if, their left tackle, I know, has a lot of injury history. Lane Johnson has been getting injured as of late too, and he's probably going to retire after this year. So you're going to have somebody that's in the pipeline ready to go. That's what smart teams do. The Eagles are a smart franchise. They usually always draft really smartly. So I think that that's something that would make a whole lot of sense there for them. Going back to the Browns, who did we take earlier? We took Caleb Downs. The Browns could certainly use some tackle reinforcements and some help along the offensive line. Kind of saw this earlier, something that would make a whole lot of sense. I love Monroe Freeling. I think he's going to rise a lot. He might be one of the first 2, maybe 3 tackles taken in this draft. Ultimately, he make a lot of sense for them out of Georgia. He can play everywhere, and I think he's just an absolute stud. And if the board were to fall like this, okay, I know that the Bears have, they could use some help along the defensive line. Like Caleb Banks would make a whole lot of sense here for him. Caden McDonald would make a whole lot of sense here for him. But could they really pass up on Jeremiah Love? I mean, could you imagine, Caleb Williams and all those pass catchers with what Colston Loveland's done, right? Maybe DJ Moore gets traded, maybe not. But they got weapons all over the place. Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet's a really good backup tackle for him. So imagine taking your run game to a whole nother level and what Jeremiah Love could be in the Ben Johnson type of offense. Man, that would be fun. That would be amazing. And I felt like if the board were to fall like this, which most likely it wouldn't, to where Jeremiah Love actually fell to 25, there's just no way that the Bears would be able to pass up on that. They could figure out the defensive line maybe elsewhere. But Jeremiah Love is way too talented, and they can figure out what they would do with their current running back there. I mean, who knows if he's even going to be back? But Kyle Monunga is a good you know rotational type of running back. Man, that would be fun. That would be fun. Jeremiah Love falling and going to the Bears, where I think he'd be the immediate favorite to be rookie of the year in that offense with what Ben Johnson could do. Because holy moly, you thought yeah, I mean, just think about what Ben Johnson's done with Jahmyr Gibbs, right? And so that's something that could make a whole lot of sense for them. And they kind of shocked everyone by taking Loveland last year, and so this is something that would be really fun, man. It'd be really, really fun for them. I dig that. I think that would be a lot of fun. All right, the Buffalo Bills, man. The Buffalo Bills, they need to get better. They need to get better in the pass game. They really do. Keon Coleman, I think he's going to be out of Buffalo. I would want to leave if I saw the way in which the GM and the coach just really disrespected him publicly. I get that he hasn't been that good of a player, but you just don't like to see that happening, to be honest with you. And I don't think Casey Concepcion really fits there. I think that he would be too similar of a player to Khalil Shakir. And so they need more of a big body kind of outside guy that can beat you and win on the outsides. Chris Bell would definitely fit that mold, but coming off of an ACL, the Bills are in a win now mode, man. They need to win now. They need to get production immediately. Chris Bell, he probably is not going to play a whole lot, if at all, in his rookie season. So where would they go here? I think with somebody that's an absolute stud, and that's Malachi Fields. I think he fits what they want to do. I think he's very, very good as a player. And I think he could really help take that passing game to a whole new level. I just think Malachi Fields is going to be a really big riser, especially after the NFL draft, in my opinion. So I think he's going to be an absolute stud there. Looking at the San Francisco 49ers, man, Caleb Banks has kind of fallen a little bit. He's someone that makes a whole lot of sense for them. Same with Caden McDonald. And so could Lee Hunter. Any one of those three, I think, would be somebody that would make a ton of sense for him. So I'm going to go Caleb Banks here. And then I'm just going to do the opposite for the next guy and go with Caden McDonald for the Houston Texans, who could use some interior defensive line help. Both those guys, this is where I could see a little bit of a run on the interior defensive lines going. And so this is something here that makes a whole bunch of sense for the Texans at number 28. I'm going to go with Caden McDonald. All right, and then now you got the Rams, right? The Rams are picking again for their second time. And the first pick at 13, I had them taking Mansour Delane. And are they going to keep adding to their secondary here? They certainly could. But I don't think that they would go with another corner. And I don't think that there's necessarily a safety that would make sense for them to take, even though it could. So, man, I really like Lee Hunter. Would he be able to fit on that O-line? Guess I got to think about that. I haven't really looked at that too much, but he could help with that D-line as well. I mean, that defense has been a lot better than I think people give him credit for. They got Brandon Fisk there. They got Kobe Turner. They got Poona Ford. Yeah, it might not make the most sense. We passed up earlier on a really good on Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. We passed up on the opportunity for him. We passed up on who else did we pass up on? That was a safety on the back end. Yeah, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. They didn't have a chance necessarily to get. Oh, they did. Oh, sorry, they didn't have a chance to get Caleb Downs. But Dylan Thieneman is someone that would make a lot of sense for him. Really be able to be a good safety on the back end that they don't really have. They got Cam Curl, who kind of had an up and down year. Cameron Kitchens, I don't really know if he's necessarily a starting caliber safety for the long term. So keep helping that defense out. Their offense is stacked. It's kind of a luxury pick for them anyways. So I'll take Dylan Thieneman there going at pick number 29 to the Rams. And that brings you to my Denver Broncos, who, if this was how it worked out, I think many people would say they're going to run to the podium and they're going to take Kenyon Sadiq. And I really didn't necessarily plan for this to happen. I'd be thrilled if the Broncos took Lee Hunter or CJ Allen or even Kristen Miller. I'm kind of getting there with him. But Kenyon Sadiq makes too much sense, man. The Broncos have been ignoring this position for way too long. He's a really good fit. He's a much better blocker than I think being given credit for. And I think he's really just scratching the surface. So last time the Broncos took an Oregon Duck in the first round, it worked out great with Bo Nix. Now they're going to get him a true, legitimate weapon and Kenyon Sadiq there. So I love that. I love that pick for him. All right, now the New England Patriots, right? They had kind of a historic run. Nobody really saw them having the turnaround that they did. And let's be honest, whether you're Patriots fans or they're not going to admit it, but this is a team that vastly overachieved, and that I think still has a lot of holes on that roster. That's really not as good as them being in the Super Bowl were to show. But specifically because they weren't really the strongest team in the trenches. Their O-line struggled a lot, which showed up a lot in the playoffs. Their D-line doesn't always get the most amount of pressure, and they could use a lot more reinforcements there. So they could go O-line or D-line here. Really either way, like Maxi Nacho would make a lot of sense. Blake Miller would make sense. But I love Lee Hunter here as well. I think Lee Hunter is somebody that could really help out on that defensive line. So he's someone that you can consider. And then looking at the edge room, Zion Young is another guy that some people are saying could arguably be the best pure pass rusher in this draft as well. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, but he makes a lot of sense there too. So it's really about which way do you want to go there. I think the edge position makes a lot of sense rather than going on the interior of the defensive line. They need to be able to get after the quarterback. Who do you guys think is the best of the guys here? Gabe Yakas, LT Overton, maybe Romello Height. I know he's probably not going to fit the mold. He's a little bit undersized at 6'3", 240. But Zion Young, the edge out of Missouri, would make a whole lot of sense for the New England Patriots, which brings us to the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks can really go in a multitude of ways. They are stacked. They just won the Super Bowl. They got a lot of money. They could just be like, hey, who's the best player available? And they can go there. And I truly believe that for what makes a lot of sense for them and where they could maybe, add a player at a really important position that could help the middle part of that defense. Because that defense, the defensive line is great. Their secondary is really good. I love the CJ Allen fit. I think CJ Allen is absolutely worth being in the conversation as a first rounder. And I think that would make a whole lot of sense. So that's my 32 pick, first round mock draft. Love to see what you guys think, man. Let me know below in the comments. But hope you guys enjoyed the combine. We'll have some more videos, more top 10 rankings at different positions coming up in the next few days. So appreciate y'all. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and take it easy.